had potentially one of the worst weeks a current president could have after his debate performance, which has been widely panned across the media and among politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike. Some Democratic politicians and leaders in the party are now being very vocal about Biden's performance and whether or not he should continue to be the nominee of the party. So for this video, I just want to talk about a few articles that I saw that kind of went over this and what news there is right now, as well as some polls and data that's out there that I think may provide some bad news for Biden, but also some potential gray area for Biden in this week that he probably desperately needs it. But for starters, a lot of people saw my debate kind of recap videos, and those have been doing very well. So if you're watching this video and have watched those ones, I really appreciate all the support you've been giving it. Biden did not have a very good debate, and it's not atypical for the president of the United States in the first debate to not do well. For instance, President Trump in 2020 did not do well in the first debate. President Obama against Mitt Romney in 2012 did not do good. So it's not really atypical for the incumbent president to do bad. But Joe Biden in that first debate just did not look like the Joe Biden of 4 years ago or even 8 years ago. He looked very different and out of it. And it allowed President Trump to be pretty much declared the universal winner of that debate, something that Democrats desperately did not want to happen. The main criticism against Biden that a lot of Democrats are now calling into question is his fitness to carry out the alternative against Trump. A lot of Democratic politicians say they have clear objectives and clear ways they want to go after former President Trump, but they don't think Joe Biden is up to the task in being able to do it and being able to serve another 4 years as president. And one such Democrat, Lloyd Doggett of Texas, he was the first one to openly say that President Biden needs to step aside and make way for a new Democratic leader to essentially deliver on that message that he believes Biden is incapable of. So for one thing, it is very important because I think we could potentially be seeing history here. Usually when there's infighting between the president and the incumbent party of the president, it's usually not good news electorally for the president. Same thing goes along as having a primary challenger for the president. We saw that with, I believe was it Gerald Ford? I think it was Gerald Ford who Reagan ran against and gave him a big run for his money, and Gerald Ford got killed in the presidential election. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% going to happen, but it's definitely not the best sign for a president. This happening with Biden right now, and well, first of all, this entire election is kind of unprecedented. We never had a president running against a former president in a very long time. So this election as itself is historic and making history, but the next few weeks and next few months about whether Biden continues to be the nominee will definitely make history and shape history here. If Biden does step down as the nominee, and I'll be getting into more, I think, who will replace him later on, but I would assume that it would be Vice President Kamala Harris. It would definitely be something we have not seen in a very, very long time in American history. I'm not sure the exact year. I probably should have researched that before this, but whatever. This has not happened for a long time. Or I'm not even sure this maybe has ever happened where the president steps down before the election, if not for a very tragic reason. And if Biden decides to stay in this, honestly, all bets are off, because does his numbers continue to get worse? Is there a turnaround in the summertime or in the fall time where maybe Biden's numbers start to rebound? Maybe if certain political issues get more active or rebound, that Biden's numbers start to go up. There's a lot of variables that can happen over the next few months or so, but nonetheless, it is very entertaining. So next on this quote, Rep. Lloyd Doggett called on Biden to drop out of the race, and Rep. Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, a Democrat, he insisted that Vice President Kamala Harris be the one to take over if Biden steps aside. And another one that I want to just add to that real quick. Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said it's completely legitimate to question whether Biden's debate performance was an episode or is this a condition. I think this is something that many Democrats either knew about Biden and probably wanted to keep a secret, or they were blindsided. I would bet on more on the side that they probably had an idea that Biden's mental capacity to be president and physical capacity to be president was slipping, but they were hoping if he could have a solid enough debate performance against Trump in the first debate that it would kind of put the fears aside and it wouldn't really matter. Seeing how Biden did in the first debate, it's pretty much unavoidable now. The Democratic politicians and Democrats have to kind of like draw their line of, do they support Biden in his current physical and mental state, or do they not? And I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a very split issue across the Democratic Party, as a lot of the polls I've gone over in the past few videos have demonstrated that. But Biden and his team are insistent that he is staying in the race and that he's going to work hard and see this through. And that's pretty much the article summed up. There's some other stuff as well where some other Democrats like Tim Ryan and I believe was a Julian Castro in Texas were saying that Biden needs to step aside for the good of the party to go after Trump. So that's the article. That's kind of what's been going on right now. Next, I just real quick, I'm using Real Clear Politics for most of this video, by the way, for a lot of the polls and charts that I'm using in this video. So if you want to go look up any of them, you can find them on Real Clear Politics, Real Clear Polling. So the betting odds for the 2024 U.S. president. Donald Trump now sits at 56%, and Joe Biden has fallen to 16.5%. So why is this significant? Well, let's just go back to the debate. Biden was at about 35%, Trump was at 51%. Trump was still favored, no doubt. But he's starting to go up a little bit. Actually, ever since really April, Trump started going back up. But after the debate, Biden really plummeted. Really plummeted. And it's not a good sign when Biden is at like 16 and his vice president's at 10. That means there's a lot of doubt as to whether in the betting odds that will it be Biden or Harris going up against Trump. There's a lot of uncertainty with a lot of people trying to guess that right now. But again, this isn't everything, but I just thought it'd be interesting just to point out real quick. Now we're getting into more of the nitty-gritty issues for Trump and Biden, or for Biden, As we know, the United States election system is an electoral college system where the states elect the electors. It is not a popular vote system. So the swing states that I have mapped out, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, these are the most competitive states, both in Real Clear Politics and on my own personal map. And it doesn't take much to realize, look over here in this column. President Trump is either winning every single swing state in the average, or he's tied in the case of Wisconsin. And Biden, overall, on average, is losing to Trump by 3.3. So what does this say for Biden? This is obviously bad news. You don't want to be losing at all. But is there any good news for Biden in here? Well, you start looking at Trump's percentages, and none of them are over 50%. And that's really the only good news I can give Biden at this time. Otherwise, Biden is not doing well at all. If for Trump to win, as I've gone over, he can win by winning, of course, North Carolina, keeping that. Georgia and Pennsylvania technically gets him to 270. But I think he should also throw in Arizona in there, and then he can do it with Wisconsin or Michigan, where Trump is either winning or tied. So Biden has not been polling very well recently and in general. And you can see in the top battlegrounds, they did kind of a spread. It's gone up and down a little bit, but Trump's actually been pretty consistent in the year of 2024 in leading in the battleground states. Which there'll be polls that come out, national polls, that show maybe Biden's up one or he's tied with Trump or he's only down one. But, I mean, the national vote and the popular vote really doesn't matter all too much. It's more the state-by-state battleground polls that matter. And Biden's losing by 3 points on average, or losing every single one except for Wisconsin where he's tied. So Biden's really in trouble here. And he needs to find a way to figure that out, but he's having a very rough week. I'm not sure if he will. But there are some underlying numbers I want to get into now about President Biden's chances of actually being reelected. So I'm going to go over some examples of past presidential performances in terms of approval rating. President Trump's approval rating in 2020 was 44.4%, negative approved of by 8.7% in the Real Clear Politics average. So why does that matter? Well, So I'm looking at this chart of president job approval ratings of the incumbent seeking re-election. This column right here is what the approval rating was in June of that election year. And this on this column is the final presidential approval before the election of that year. So, for example, in June, President Obama of 2012 had a 46% approval rating. By the election, he had 52%. George Bush, 49% approve, then 48%, he won. H.W. Bush had 37% approval in June and 34% before the election, and he lost. Jimmy Carter, when he lost, 37% approval. Gerald Ford, unfortunately, does not have the data on this side, but I would definitely bet it was lower than 45%. So the main message I'm trying to grasp here is, it seems that every candidate that won re-election, their approval rating was either above 50%, or in the case of George W. Bush, it was very, very close to even, close to 50%. President Trump, if I go back, let me go to back to the right page, had a 44% approval rating. And he lost to Joe Biden in a very close election where a lot of the key states were decided by 2 or 3% or less. So very, very close. But with 44%, he lost the election. And now we go to the general election where Trump versus Biden. And Trump is leading Biden on average by 2.4%. Now, I know I just said a few minutes ago that the national polls really don't matter all that much. But still, just to give you a snapshot, Trump is leading by about 2.4 points nationwide in national polls, and he's leading by about 3 points in the swing state polls. And as you can see, there's been a lot of up and down, but this is the point where Biden's starting to get to his lowest numbers. Trump, by all means, percentage-wise, just from a pure noticing standpoint, Trump is not running away with this. It's not like Trump is getting 50% of the vote and the average, and Biden's at 40%. This is still a 2.3 race. Trump's at 46, Biden's at 43.7. There's still room for Biden to make up this gap and to even surpass Trump before Election Day. The only question is, Biden is definitely trending downward in his polling performance, and can he spin that back around? Now, this is actually a very interesting chart I wanted to pull up, and this is Biden versus Trump favorability. And as you can see, it has the year of 2020 and 2019. I'm going to go to around Election Day in November. Around November, where Biden was way more approved of than Trump was. Biden was 6 points approved of more, and Trump had negative almost 13 disapprove. So I'm showing you this for a reason. I'm not just showing this because I think this graph looks cool, although I do think it looks cool. But there's something very interesting going on here. Look how well Biden was approved of when he took office in his first few months of being president. It immediately fell around September, around the Afghanistan situation with President Biden, and it seems to have never recovered. His approval rating's always kind of been bad. The reason that Biden was so competitive with Trump and is still competitive with Trump is Trump's approval rating is almost just as bad and right there with him, and at times worse than Biden's. I don't think Trump or Biden have been approved of in polls. I think it was Biden since 2021. Trump, I don't think it's ever been above 0 in this chart, and Biden hasn't been above 0, since September of 2021. They keep going back and forth, but now Trump has taken a narrow lead in terms of who's approved of more by about 4 points, and Biden is starting to go back down. The question is, where does this chart go from here? Trump can keep going up. He can stay stagnant. Biden can keep going down. He can go back up. It really can depend. But this is what the favorability chart looks like right now. Lastly, the last chart I wanted to show you is the favorability and unfavorability of the president. Biden has 40.3% on average favorable view, and he has a 56% unfavorable view. So why am I showing you this? Why does this matter? It matters because, as I showed you on the other chart, let me go back to that. No, I'm looking at the wrong one. Here we go. President Trump had 44.4% approval, and he narrowly lost the election to Joe Biden, who was much more approved of, if we go back to the other chart. On Election Day, Biden was actually pretty well approved of. Let me find November. Yeah. Biden was very well approved of compared to Trump. If the election were held today, they're both disapproved of, but Trump is disapproved of less than Biden, which is Biden's main problem. If the election's held today, you have, I think, two of the most unpopular candidates in the history of American politics, or close to it, going at it. And I think in this case, it's whoever is the least unpopular is going to be the candidate who wins. And right now, Donald Trump is slightly less unpopular nationwide than Biden is. And when I mean unpopular, I mean across like Republicans, Democrats, and independents put together. Biden, I'm sure, is popular in the Democratic side. Trump, I'm sure, is very popular in the Republican side. I'm just talking about nationwide overall. Biden is sitting at 40% or so of the vote. Trump got 44%, and he lost by about 2 to 3% in a few states, in the Rust Belt states, and very closely he lost in Arizona and Georgia. If Biden is at 40% overall and it doesn't go up, he's definitely in big trouble and likely to lose the election. Now, is there good news for Biden? Potentially, because I mentioned, look at some of the numbers in June of the election year versus the final month. Obama went up by 6% in that time period. Bush remained pretty much the same. Clinton remained the same. Bush W went down. Reagan went up by 4. Carter went up by 5. So it's a mixed bag as whether the president's approval rating will go up or down from now to the election. So it's not 100% a sure bet that Biden's 40% approval rating is what it is now. It's definitely not good, but he does theoretically have time to try to improve it. And for that matter, so does Donald Trump. If Biden continues to falter, perhaps Trump's approval rating will go up. And maybe Trump has been, I think, a bit more tactical in the last few weeks, where he's been quieter than usual. He hasn't been making as many statements as usual. Perhaps he's trying to appeal more to moderate voters in the middle and try to steal those from Biden, as Biden in his campaign is having a lot of trouble right now. Maybe we'll see Trump's approval rating start going up in a few polls. The point I'm making here is, even though both of these candidates are unpopular, at least right now, by numbers wise, Biden is the more unpopular of the two, which gives Trump an edge. But there is time for both of them to try to improve their approval rating or improve their approval ratings, and that can certainly change the race. And I also wanted to mention here, Kamala Harris's approval rating is shockingly low. It's at 38.7% to 54% unfavorable. Harris's approval rating is very low, despite the fact that she's not the president. She's not really directly responsible for too much, but she's approved of less than Biden, which is kind of interesting because she's the one that a lot of people are talking about being Biden's alternative if he can't be the nominee, because of course she's the vice president. But there's a fear among... It's kind of weird because Republicans, I would say, probably think that Biden and Harris are one and the same and that Trump will beat either one. Democrats, there's an increasing number of Democrats who think that if it's Biden or Harris, Harris may have the better shot at winning. And the numbers are a little conflicting here, but there's a new poll out by CNN and SRRS that did this poll of Democratic alternatives to Biden going up against Trump. In this poll, Trump beat Biden 49% to 43%. But in the same poll, Kamala Harris loses to Trump by 2 points, 47% to 45%. And I believe that's in the poll's margin of error. So, where Biden is losing to Trump outside the margin of error, Trump versus Harris is technically a dead heat when it comes to competitiveness. Now, it could be this is just a poll right now. If this were to actually happen and it would become Trump versus Harris, then it is technically a whole different race. The issues of whether President Biden is physically capable of doing the job goes away, and it becomes probably an election based more on policy and issues than one on who's actually fit to do the job, which is where I think the Republicans are capitalizing on the most right now. Is Trump is more physically and mentally fit to be president than Joe Biden. At least all the post-debate polls seem to suggest that. Harris versus Trump, I think that argument kind of goes away, especially considering Harris is much younger than Trump and much younger than Biden, which could reflect the smaller difference of results here. And while I'm also here, they also did a poll of Gretchen Whitmer versus Donald Trump, 47-42. Trump's leading in that one by 5 points. Newsom to Trump, 48-43. Pete Buttigieg versus Trump, 47-43. Cory Booker versus Trump, 46-44. And Pritzker versus Trump, 46-43. and Amy Klobuchar as well, 46-43 for Trump. So I think they just threw in a bunch of names here. For instance, I don't think Klobuchar, Pritzker, or Booker are really in much consideration. If Biden were not to be the nominee, for one, I totally think it would be Vice President Kamala Harris, because the vice president, if the president is to step down, I believe is the next in line, so it should be her either way. But if by some reason they went around her, Whitmer has stated multiple times that she does not want to do that, so it would probably be Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg if it was not Harris. Probably Newsom would be my bet, but I think all of them have rebuked that and are saying they're supporting Biden. But it is at very least interesting and something to monitor if there becomes more polls, because I imagine we'll have some Trump versus Biden head-to-head polls coming out. But if there's Trump versus Harris polls and they show Harris gaining ground or doing better than Biden, that conversation of does Biden get swapped for Harris might get a little bit louder, especially as you go to the map, because, I mean, again, I've done this in my last few videos. It's all about how you get to 270 electoral votes. I've, in the past, done it from Trump's perspective, how he gets there. Biden, it's how does he get there? He has to play defense, and he can get there by winning the Rust Belt states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That's all Biden has to do. Hold everything else he held in 2020, including Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and he's the president of the United States for another 4 years. He can lose Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia and still win if he can hold these 3 states. But again, the issue for Biden, let me find the right page, Biden is losing by 3 points in Pennsylvania. Trump's at 48, Biden's at 45, so there's some undecided vote. There's a little bit of room to move around for Biden, but still, you don't want to be losing. Michigan, 47, 45.8, Trump's up by 1.2. If I'm Biden, I feel better about winning Michigan than I probably do about winning Pennsylvania. If these numbers were to stay the same, I, of course, imagine in the next 6 months these numbers will not stay the same, but Trump is hovering around 47, 48% in most of these states. So there's room to grow for Biden. The question is Biden competent enough and capable enough of being president where enough people say, all right, I'll vote for him, and they aren't talking about it now? That's the question. But Biden can win these 3 states. He's president of the United States again. If Trump were to win one of them, well, then Biden can still become president, but then it involves winning one of the 2 states or that he flipped last time, Arizona or Georgia. The only problem for Biden is Trump has been polling much better in Georgia. I mean, even if Biden wins the election, I still expect Georgia to go for red for Trump. So Biden, I think, Arizona has to be one of his top targets. It's kind of like a contingency plan in case Trump was able to win one of Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. If Trump wins Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, well, then Biden's map gets a lot harder. He can try to win Georgia, and he can try to win Nevada. That gets him to 274. He can still win, but it's a little bit harder to imagine Biden winning all 3 of these states and Trump winning Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and losing Michigan. It's kind of like a weird scenario that I don't think we're probably going to see in election night. If Trump is able to win Michigan, that gets him to 279. Biden's map becomes pretty much impossible, unless he can somehow flip North Carolina. But if all 3 Rust Belt states are going red, I kind of find it hard to believe North Carolina is going blue. So my point is for Biden, right now for Biden and his campaign, it definitely seems like the sky is falling and that things are kind of like falling and ending for Biden. There is still time for Biden's campaign and for Biden to try and weather this storm and turn things around. The question is, he has to start doing it soon, and can that happen? Because time is great, but Biden's numbers have to improve, or Trump's going to be in a very good position coming to Election Day if things don't improve. Because today, if the election were today, I think Donald Trump would win the election, and I don't think it would be all that close in terms of electoral votes. Like every single one of these goldish colored toss-up states, if the election were held today, I think Donald Trump wins them all. Which is not a massive electoral college landslide if he wins all the toss-up states, but it's definitely bigger than what he had in 2016 and what Biden had in 2020. So Biden needs to find a way to get his numbers back up and turn things around. Or if he's unable to do that, the conversation of maybe Kamala Harris may step in for Biden, or maybe Biden may step down. Maybe that conversation that Biden and his family and some of his closest advisors are saying isn't happening, maybe it becomes more of a possibility the closer we get to Election Day. So that was a longer video. I went through a lot of stuff, but I really appreciate if you watched all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it. Please subscribe to my channel if you've not yet done so. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.